Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
My name's Amy Draves, and I'm honored to welcome Dr. Temple Grandin to the Microsoft Research Visiting Speaker Series. Temple's here today to discuss her book, The Autistic Brain, Thinking Across the Spectrum. She is one of the world's most accomplished and well-known adults with autism. She has a PhD in animal science, is a professor at Colorado State University, and has authored several best-selling books, including Thinking in Pictures and Animals in Translation. In 2010, she was recognized as one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world in the Heroes category. Please join me in giving her a very warm welcome.
It's great to be here. Hope everybody can hear me just fine. First of all, I think I'll just start out and explain a little bit about autism. You know, if you didn't have a little bit of autism, you wouldn't have any tech industry. Just that simple. And I'm saying that absolutely seriously. So there's a point where it's just normal variation. You know, they found that people that have bipolar, if you got more creative relatives. People with autism, more techie relatives. You know, you take out a few social genes, so a few social things, you get geek genes. You see, a lot of these so-called disorders in very small amounts can give advantages. And the thing is, diagnosing something like autism is not precise. Now, the thing is, how about little Albert? Little Albert had no speech until age 3. He would probably be diagnosed autistic today. Now, why are so many kids getting diagnosed autistic or dyslexic or ADHD or this or that? Well, in order to get services in the school, they got to have a label. And the problem you got with autism is, at one end of the spectrum, you got, I think Steve Jobs was on the spectrum because he was a weird loner who got bullied. He brought snakes to school. And there's an awful lot, and turned them loose, too. There was an awful lot of kids that end up with an autism label because they've been bullied and they don't have any friends. And way too many kids are being given way too many medications, too. Then at the other end of the spectrum, you got a person that remains nonverbal. So this thing called autism is a really big spectrum. Well, the ones that are really smart, I want them working for Microsoft, not ending up jobless. The diagnosis is not precise. It's a behavioral profile. And they keep changing it. Let's look at the history of the diagnosis. They have constantly kept changing it. You used to think it was all psychology. In 1980, they made it that you had to have speech delay. And then in 1994, they added Asperger's syndrome, where you didn't have to have speech delay. You're just a geek, and you can be Asperger's. Now they're going to take the Asperger's out and call it social communication disorder. I think a lot of this has to do with funding, but it's still the same thing. Still exactly the same thing. The genetics is complicated. You're looking at little tiny code variations. You know, a little bit of this, maybe some advantage. It's a complicated genetics. Now the thing is, only 2% of the genome codes for proteins. The rest of the genome is the operating system. And the thing is, nobody actually knows how the genetic operating system works. You know, when you fold up the genome, the coding DNA folds up against the non-coding DNA in ways that's probably mathematical, not well understood. I loved this quote from Nature magazine. Our results start to place genes and regulatory elements in a three-dimensional context, revealing their functional relationships. You know, that's sort of the mathematics kind of mind. It's some kind of mathematical thing. There's a program that tells the coding DNA what to do. It's not a simple genetics. And the thing is, personality traits are kind of like a music mixing board. You know, you can be more anxious or less anxious, more mathematical or less mathematical. This is probably the best way to look at it. You can kind of turn the volume controls up or down. And when you take two techies and you put them together, you know, you're kind of loading the dice. Because I've been finding around the tech centers, I get lots of hits on my website from the various towns where the tech centers are. Now, I'm a total visual thinker. I can't do programming. I don't think in words. I think totally in photorealistic pictures. Now, that helped me in my work in designing livestock equipment. What I do, and what Steve Jobs did, is industrial design. He designed the user interface. And then the engineers had to make the insides of the computer work. That's where you've got the two different kinds of minds working together. And I absolutely cannot remember sequence. I get very frustrated with electronic devices. I cannot remember sequence for doing different things. Unless it's something that tells me what the next step is, I just get stuck. And I find them incredibly frustrating to use. Where you guys are great at sequence, so it's an easy deal. You go boom, 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 and I'm going, that's me. So I visualize stuff. Now, I used to joke around that I had a huge internet line deep inside my head. Turns out that this circuit in my head is bigger than normal. But you want to see the real mind-blowing brain scan, it's on the USA Today article. You can use keywords, USA Today, Temple Grandin. You'll see the real mind-blowing super visual circuit thing. I've got a fairly big visual circuit there. Probably upper 25% for visual circuits. This circuit's normal. The one that's shown on USA Today is not. But the thing is, what tends to go across the spectrum on people with a little bit of the autism trait is the social awkwardness. Those circuits not being hooked up. But things like whether you're a visual thinker or a programmer thinker, you can have a person on the spectrum that's a mathematical thinker, art thinker, or maybe a word thinker. And there are some of my drawings. The thing is, when I was a weird geek, the only way I could sell myself was showing off my work. Let's see if this is a good projector. Yes, we've got a good projector. Good, good, good. Sometimes the drawings look just terrible on the projector. And I had to sell myself by showing off my work. We've got to, well, another thing I'm getting really big on is teaching work skills. I am seeing too many smart kids. They get to college, maybe get a degree in history or something like that, and they've never had a job. They haven't learned that even the very best job has some drudgery. When I was 13, my mother got me a little sewing job. And when I was 15, I was cleaning out all these horse stalls and managing the horse barn. And one of the things that motivated me to do that is I wanted to prove I could do it. That's learning work skills. We need to be doing a whole lot more of that. Now, what ended up happening here is my math department sort of got trashed out and it's full of water. So left parietal area, no sequencing, horrible working memory, terrible at doing all the kind of programming stuff. So it's sort of like you take away one thing and it got visual thinking. See, people that tend to get a label tend to be on the more extreme ends of uneven skills. Good at one thing, bad at something else. And one of the things I'm really concerned about with all the STEM education stuff, science, technology, engineering, and math, is it's going to block my kind out of science. But you need my kind. You need me to look at the methods section of the paper and go, yeah, these two experiments came out with different results because you used a different breed of rat or pig or something like that. You need me. I'm going to show you more examples why you need me on the scientific team. In 1968, Bill Gates and I had access to this computer terminal right here. Free, all the time we wanted, tons of instruction. I wanted to learn to program this. I couldn't do it. Free instruction, I had all the access when Bill Gates did it. Yeah, and that's why you have Microsoft. And I agree with Malcolm Gladwell that you have to do lots of practice. Yes. I agree with him that you have to have access to the facility. Well, we both had that. He did it. I couldn't. They just don't have the, full of cerebral spinal fluid. It's just not going to work. Now, you get people that get various labels. ADHD, dyslexia, all these different labels they put on them, and it is just behavioral profiling. It's sort of like profiling hijackers. It's a behavioral profile. Now, I am the photorealistic visual thinker. Can't do algebra. Absolutely couldn't do algebra. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm saying a lot of kids who can't do algebra, let's go right on to geometry and trig. Let's just skip the algebra. Never even got a chance to do geometry. So how did I manage to get through college? I got to thank the educational fads of the late 60s. Because in 66, everybody had to take finite math, which is probabilities, matrices, and statistics. With a ton of tutoring from Mr. Dion, the wonderful math teacher, I got through it. Then you have the pattern thinker. These are your programs. These are the programmer people. These are the guys that are going to be engineers, computer programmers. Oftentimes these little kids have trouble with reading. This little kid, he might need a math book, 3 or 4 grades harder, but may have trouble with reading. And don't make these little math kids do baby math. You want to turn them into a behavior problem? They'll make them a gigantic behavior problem. Then you got the verbal facts thinker. This is the kid that loves history, a lot of words, likes to do a lot of word stuff, very good at detail. Now the thing is, the autistic mind tends to be in the detail. It's also what's called bottom-up thinking. Concepts are formed with specific examples, not the other way around. Now here's scientific evidence that there really are 2 types of visualizers. And there's 2 really new things that are in the Autistic Brain book. The history of the diagnosis, which is pretty shocking when you see how they keep changing it. Nobody's sitting around changing the diagnosis of tuberculosis. You either got it or you don't. I would say the DSM diagnostic categories are half science and half doctors fighting in conference rooms, locked up in the hotel somewhere. And there are scientific studies that really are 2 different types of visualizers. The photorealistic ones like me, and the more mathematical, where you are in space type of visualizer. Just to show you there's different ways you can do the math, the more verbal way and the more visual spatial way. Now I want to give you a little trip into the mind of the pattern thinker. This is not my mind. That praying mantis is made out of a single sheet of folded paper. What you see in the background is the folding pattern. And here's some great origami stars that kids gave to me. Going, wow, I couldn't do this stuff. They always like to show my drawings off, because the only way I could get anybody to take me seriously was showing them my drawings. And they go, oh, you did that? And here's some beautiful artwork by Jessie Park. She does, she's somebody who probably has moderate level autism. Here's some other fabulous artwork done by Grant Marnier, the eco artist, probably more at the moderate level. Now his mom's really worked hard to develop disability. Well, this is where you need my kind of mind. Well, there's a picture there, the Fukushima nuclear power plant, all blown up and burned up and radioactive, total horribleness. So I get interested in this sort of stuff. So I went and I got nothing to do on the plane, so I buy 4 newspapers. I've got a really bad cold. I'm sorry about the coughing. And get some water here. And I couldn't, when I finally figured out after reading all these papers, reading paper after paper after paper for a week, when I found out why it's burned up, they made a mistake I would never make. I can't design a nuclear reactor. That's the job for the mathematicians. But it's not too smart when you live next to the sea to put those super important emergency generators that run the emergency cooling pumps in a non-waterproof basement. So what do you think happened when the tsunami came over the seawall, flooded out the generators, flooded out the electrical system? Nothing worked. I've been looking at the whole mess with the Boeing Dreamliner airplane. Well, and then I thought it was very interesting they'd admit in Congress they never looked outside the airplane. I couldn't believe how they did that risk analysis. To me, you just tested the airplane mathematically with a perfect battery. Well, we know these batteries are prone to damage. How about the laptop that caught on fire in an airplane? Well, how about 3 cargo jets that burned up hauling lithium-ion computer batteries? Weren't those in the risk analysis? 3 of them. Not 1 cargo jet, 3 cargo jets. How about the pallet of lithium-ion batteries that was dropped at an airport and started to catch on fire? I just Googled fires of lithium-ion batteries, cargo planes. It's not pretty. That was not in the risk analysis. You see, one of the things I'm going to show you later on in the brain scan is I have a gigantic visual association circuit. Show you how that works. The best picture of it is on the USA Today website. It's like so cool. I wish that picture was in the book, but Walter hadn't made that scan yet. They had to do a whole bunch of computer stuff to get that. But USA Today has it, and we need that associating and getting outside the box. My brain's designed to go outside the box. Okay, in my work with cattle, I notice that cattle notice little tiny things that people don't notice. Like the cattle don't want to go into this facility because the flags they're waving and it's scaring the cattle. They don't want to go in there. Most people don't notice the flag. Okay, How many people noticed that that animal locked onto that light? How many people noticed it? Okay, see, I have to teach my students to be visually observant. I'm finding maybe only about 10% of people notice it, and I want to point it out, you see it. Cattle are afraid, I get asked, are cattle afraid of getting slaughtered? They're more afraid of it's too dark. There's a shiny reflection. There's a hose on the ground. Things like that. If you want to see how my meat plant stuff works, I got a great video, beef plant video tour with Temple Grandin. You can go look it up. An animal's world is sensory-based. It's sensory-based. It's not word-based. Think pictures, smells, touch sensations. There's evidence in normal human beings, language covers up visual thinking. There's Alzheimer's patients will start sometimes doing pictures. And when Van Gogh painted Starry Night, I don't think he realized he was putting mathematics in it. My thinking's bottom up. Everything's learned by specific examples. So if you've got a kid with autism, get them out doing things. I'm seeing too many kids on the high end of the spectrum not learning basic stuff, how to shake hands, how to shop. You know, 19-year-old honors student who drives, she's never grocery shopped by herself. You know, let's learn how to use a debit card. I mean, it's a lot of things you need to learn how to do. My thinking's associative and not linear. Okay, I got a picture of mine, United Airlines Terminal in Chicago. Now, my associated mind can now either go into two different categories, glass structure category or an airport category. There's no generalized pictures. Here's my glass structure, and they come up like a series of slides. They come up sequentially. Biosphere in Arizona, Crystal Palace, the greenhouse at Colorado State, and then the Crystal Palace they got down in Dallas, Texas. Airports, Denver, you can go through the airports. You know, that's a LaGuardia. But when I ask an astrophysicist what he sees when he sees church steeple, I see specific ones. And a lot of people just see a vague generalized one. He saw a motion of people praying and singing and things like that, kind of a motion thing. I go, oh, wow. Cattle make visual categories. Man on a horse, man on the ground, two different things. It's very important to train them to both. Because you see, man on the horse, man on the ground, two totally different things. So if the cattle are used to the man on the horse, then suddenly there's a man on the ground, they'll be scared of that. See, it's very specific. In categorizing problems with equipment, do we have a people training issue, or do we have something wrong with the equipment? I find a lot of people have a hard time differentiating between an equipment problem and a problem with the people. I'm sorry about all the coughing. I'm getting over a really super bad cold. And it's going to be another 2 days coughing before I totally get over that. Okay, you got an autistic kid, a real severe one. Got a behavior problem. Is it biology or is it behavior? Is he pitching a fit because you want him to stop playing a video game? Or is he pitching a fit because there's so much noise in this restaurant he can't stand it? One's biology, the other's not. It's okay to be geeky. It's okay to be weird. And the lucky geeks get to do fun things like put the Mars rover on the moon. You got the Mohawk guy and the Elvis guy, and then you got an ancient old hippie. And where are the old people with the mild autism? I see them all the time. They manage to get jobs. But now you see in the schools, in order to get services, any kind of services, you got to have a label. And I'm seeing too many smart kids, you know, not going anywhere. This drives me crazy. They're not learning work skills. I think putting them on a paper route would be a great thing. Also, in the autistic brain, there's jobs for visual thinkers like me, and for the mathematic minds, and for the verbal minds. Now, when I go on a functional MRI machine, I was more interested in looking at pictures of things than pictures of people. But we need people interested in things. There wouldn't be any computers if you didn't have people interested in things. There wouldn't even be any electric lights. Tesla, the inventor of the power plant, definitely be labeled autistic today. Now, what you got to do to help these kids that are different to succeed, you got to stretch them. You can't just throw them into something new. That causes panic. No sudden surprises. But you got to stretch them. When I was 8 years old, My mother would have me put on my party dress and serve hors d'oeuvres to her guests, shake hands with each guest. And I liked doing that. It was a grown-up privilege, a real grown-up thing to do that. But it taught super important social skills. And then I had my great science teacher. I loved the way he was shown in the movie. There's a scene in the movie where I said, is he really a NASA space scientist? And then it shows him with the space helmet. I just start crying when I see that. He was a NASA space scientist, and that space helmet was real. It was a real space helmet, which made it even more cool. That's the kind of stuff I get kind of choked up about. We got to find people, a lot of you guys could mentor some of these kids. See, because the problem you got with autism, the label's so broad. At one end, we've got lots of people that work in tech, and at the other end, we've got very severe people and not going to be working here. But it all has the same name. Don't get locked into the labels. And we've got to learn work skills. The other things that kids don't do today is get together and do play outside where they have to make up their own games. I was just talking to Julie, who lives here in Seattle, and a good friend of mine. She works on my Grandin.com webpage, and which is kind of an old-fashioned webpage, but you know what? It downloads on the crappiest computers in the world. And that's one of the reasons why it's kept the way it is. The worst computers, dial-ups can actually access that. And you know what's a big problem out in our rural areas? Internet access. There's all kinds of fabulous stuff online. Can't play the videos. In Crete, Nebraska, it doesn't work. In Gearing, Nebraska, it doesn't work. Okay, and she was telling me about how she gets her kids off the video games. It's okay to play some video games, but not for 8 hours a day. She said her kids had the greatest time busting up rocks to see what was inside them. And then they decided that, well, she had them wearing safety glasses, but then they didn't like the rocks going on their arms, so they put coats on. Then they made up a game with the rock pieces. But you see, that's teaching important social skills. My ability in art was encouraged. Usually when you start to see if a kid's got a special skill, it's around 3rd or 4th grade. The little math kids, you need to move them ahead. Art kids, I was one of those. Encourage them to draw lots of different things. They got to learn how to do assignments. They got to learn how to do stuff that other people want. Here's great online resources. I'm sure you guys know about all this stuff. And there's one of my designs in SketchUp. That's no longer your competitor's product anymore. But you see, I do these talks all over the place, and I want to show parents, teachers out there, cool stuff that's available. And I go, yeah, and you can do a 3D printer of that, and the little gates will actually work. Isn't that cool? There's all kinds of online science projects. When I was in high school and not doing very much studying, boy, I started learning some work skills. This is our Skeeto house before and after I fixed it all up. My science teacher is a really important mentor. Let's tap into some of the retirees. It doesn't matter if he's teaching the kid ancient old computer language. It doesn't matter. What you're doing is turning the spark on. You gotta get the spark turned on. And I'm very concerned that our educational system might be kind of failing to stimulate some of the different kinds of minds. I think with the STEM stuff, they're doing some really good stuff with the elementary school kids, but then they hit the wall at algebra. And if you screen out all of us guys, you're gonna have some problems. All right, hacking the power grid. This is something I'm very concerned about. Well, some people are gonna think I'm a total Luddite. There's 3 things on any heavy equipment that need to have a non-computerized automatic off switch. Gets too hot, spins too fast, too much pressure, shut her down. You all heard about Stuxnet? Well, Stuxnet was the thing that messed up the Iranian centrifuges, and it instructed a Siemens industrial controller to spin the centrifuges till they broke. Well, I'm not going to go into the politics of that, but Siemens industrial controllers are pretty common. Let's say that was a major power plant. Spins too fast, breaks it. Well, if you put a real simple governor on it, it shuts it down. And it should be a non-computerized thing. Spins too fast, shut her down. The problem is, I visualize how we can break it. Okay, how about a totally electronic car? There's 3 things I want in that. An absolute kill switch to the battery. It's not computerized, so I can disconnect the power, brake, and steer it off the road. I don't have to have anything else, but those are 3 things that better work even if the computer's completely gone haywire. I got to be able to get it off the road and stop it. Period. Okay. I think it's bad that schools have taken out the hands-on classes. Cooking, sewing, woodworking, wood shop, all the different trades. They teach practical problem solving. Some states are beginning to realize this is wrong and they're putting them back in again, thank goodness. Well, this is the stuff that saved me when I was a kid, because the only places I was not bullied was the specialized interests. Get kids involved in things like electronics or computer programming or doing things with 3D printers, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, things with their specialized interests. We need people in this country that can get back to doing real stuff. And I'm seeing too many smart kids that ought to be working here that are getting addicted to video games. I know you're opening your new Xbox. A little bit of Xbox is fine. An hour a day is fine. But I'm seeing too many smart kids, especially the little math geniuses, where some of them are collecting Social Security checks playing video games all day. That's not okay. Haven't learned any work skills. No, if they can get a job in the video game industry, fine, I'm all for it. You could actually get paid to play video games in a legitimate business. I'd be all right with that. That's not what's happening. I'm seeing too many quirky kids not getting challenged and getting into good careers. You've also got to show kids interesting stuff to get them interested in interesting stuff. Oil rigs have joysticks too. We got lots of those in Colorado. Now, the thing that's a key to successful employment is you sell your work and not yourself. We've got to work on, sorry about the coughing, probably going to have to get a cough drop. I'm really, really coughing bad. I'm going to wait until the question and answer period. But you've got to sell your work rather than yourself. And then the other thing is, how does the boss work with these guys? You've got to give them very specific goals. And when they make social mistakes, let me give you an example that was done with me. My very first design and construction project. I criticized some welding, and I said it looked like a pigeon doo-dooed on it. And Harley, the plant engineer, pulled me into his office, and he didn't scream at me, he quietly said to me, we have to nip these little cancers before they metastasize. You're going up in the cafeteria right now and apologizing for that kind of talk. That's the way the boss handles it. In private, giving the instruction on what to do. Don't be vague. Let's say you're teaching a kid to be a science museum tour guide. That's a great job for 12-year-olds. A lot of museums will take them that young. Someone's got to demonstrate correct distance, how do you greet people, assess their performance, and how they interact with the visitors. You can also get sensory problems in conjunction with a lot of different labels. Loud sounds hurt my ears. Some people may have problems with hearing hard consonant sounds. My speech teacher had to slow down, talk to me more slowly. Okay, let's look at some more cool scans. This is a fiber bundle in the brain for speak what you hear. Got a little tiny, tiny shrimp. This is a fiber bundle for speak what you see. And this fiber bundle goes from the visual cortex, goes from about here to about here, the language area. That's mine. And you can see it branches out way further. But another thing that happens is if you look in the circles there, I got less bandwidth for language output. Now you can see, looking at this, that these are truncated here. The scan is truncated, they've been cut off. But this is actually, if you go in the USA Today, this other part of all those fibers go all over everywhere. So the circuit that's for speak what I see isn't just doing speak what I see. It's kind of a word-based search engine for visual thinking. And I wish I had the scan USA Today in the book. I've got this scan here in the book. Attention shifting can be slower. People that are on the spectrum, they need a quiet place to work. Maybe they got to get away from fluorescent lights. There's some individuals, when they go to read, they can see the print jiggle on the page. Sometimes colored lenses will help them. Sometimes colored paper will help them. I got a lot of tips in the autistic brain how to deal with sensory problems. This is something where they need to be doing research on this. They're very variable. One autistic kid has visual problems. Another one has sound sensitivity. It's extremely variable. Okay, there's my head. What you see right there is the connectome. This is the white matter fibers that connect up different parts of the brain. See, around the perimeter is the gray matter. Hopefully there's some gray matter in that space there. This only shows the white matter inner connector circuits. And this new imaging method can actually dissect out the circuits. So you can actually dissect out the speak what you see circuit. See, older imaging, okay, about two white fibers crossing, is that a bridge or an intersection? Okay, if it's a bridge, it doesn't connect. If it's an intersection, they connect. This scanner can tell the difference. Walter tries to explain it to me, but I don't really understand that. But boy, I can sure understand what you could do with it. And there's the connectome minus the rest of the head. They also found out that my fear center is 3 times larger. It's true with a lot of visual thinkers. That's why I take antidepressants. I got lots of designer friends and math friends that take antidepressants to stop the constant panic attacks. But not everybody on the spectrum has this problem. It's real variable. Cerebellum is small, but again, that's not universal across the spectrum. Here are some accommodations we may need to do. Some individuals have got to get away from 60-cycle fluorescent lights. They'll need a quiet place to work. They'll need breaks where they can calm down. And no sudden surprises in work routine. And I got to have no scratchy clothes. And I find some 100% cotton itches and others does not. Now, it's okay for geeks to cry. I got kicked out of 9th grade for throwing a book. I had to switch from anger to crying after I had horseback riding taken away for 2 weeks. And when they shut down the space shuttle, they were crying on 60 Minutes and walking off. That's why they had those jobs. And I tell parents, if your teenage boy cries, you got to go good. You know, geeks that cry can have cool jobs like NASA. I've talked to a number of retired NASA space scientists that have grandkids that are on the autism spectrum. They said, oh man, all my colleagues, they were all on the spectrum. What we got to do with these kids that are kind of different is in the town, figure out, just in the town, things we can do to teach them social skills, teach them work skills, get them to work in a little store that a friend has, walk dogs for the neighbors, mow some lawns, work in the farmer's market. You know, they've got to learn that responsibility and discipline of work. If there's a paper route around, if they still exist, that would be excellent. You know, everybody in the family's got to work together, especially when you have severe autism. See, this is the problem. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got a kid that you can't go to a movie with him. You can't go to a restaurant. He's screaming and pitching a fit because of sensory overload. That's very, very rough on the families. We got to get people out of their silos. Got to get people thinking outside the box. I know that's a really hard thing for people to do. Well, and then they're going to be building a new therapeutic writing center at CSU. Of course, we're looking for money for that. So, leave that up there. And now we're going to do some questions. And I'm going to pick somebody. I'm sorry about all the coughing and stuff, but I can't help it. And I'll repeat the question.
My question is regarding my son's education.
And how old is your son?
He's 11 years old.
He's 11 years old and fully verbal?
He's not fully verbal.
He's not fully verbal, okay.
He speaks when he needs things, but one of the things we're challenged with is going into 6th grade.
Okay, good. We have Mike.
Thanks. He's going into 6th grade, and the school district, the public school system, is trying to switch his academic curriculum from an academic curriculum to a functional skills curriculum. We are trying to understand what's the best thing for him to do.
The question here, I want to repeat it in case people hear it, is, okay, you got an 11-year-old, partially verbal, not completely fully verbal. Should you be going more in a functional? He's got to learn functional. But I am seeing smart kids, milder than me, at 11 years old, that can't go into a store and buy a candy bar and behave properly. I could do that when I was 7. And so I think it's essential that he's got to learn those sort of things. I was one time, I got picked up at the airport by a dad, and his 12-year-old partially verbal son We stop at a gas station. This kid goes in there, yanks all the candy off the shelf and is throwing it on the floor in this gas station. Well, this kid was high functioning enough, if he was taught, he wouldn't have done that. So you've got to have, you can't be doing that kind of stuff, go in a store and just trash it, throw things on the floor.
One quick follow-up. So, I mean, we're trying to do that at home, obviously, teaching him functional skills.
But he needs to do it at school, too.
Okay.
And he's 11. Well, first of all, I don't like to go by the autism label. I kind of like to go more like, what can he do? Can he read the sports page and tell you who won?
No.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get some idea here of the reading level. Can he do dress himself, feed himself?
Yes. Yes.
Can he cook something in the microwave?
Yes.
Okay, so he can do those kind of simple skills. And he can do simple cooking. Well, one of the things that would probably be a good thing, he needs to learn how to, start learning some work skills. That, one thing that I'm seeing with these kids, they aren't learning how to do tasks that other people want. See, when I was back in 3rd grade and my ability in art showed up, I would have just done endless horse heads. Well, I was encouraged to draw something else, and when I painted a really nice picture of beach that was pretty close to professional quality, my mother put it in a glass frame on the wall. And yes, I knew the difference between a glass frame and the refrigerator door. I definitely knew the difference there. And this is something where you're going to have to use your judgment. But the thing is, you and the school have got to work together as a team. And what I find is that depends so much upon a particular people and a particular situation. It doesn't have anything to do about whether it's public or private. It's all back to who the particular people are. But you and a school have got to get on the same wavelength. Okay?
It's so nice to meet you, Temple. My son is 8. He just turned 8, 2nd grade, nonverbal. I want to encourage social skills.
Well, I definitely want to teach social skills.
Yeah, I want
Definitely.
him in Boy Scouts. I want him to be on a softball team. I want him to engage in these things, but there are not a lot of organizations or things that he can go to there. They're able to work with him. So I don't want to throw him into an environment
Well,
where...
no, you've got to, okay, he's 8 years old. What does he like to do?
Godzilla.
Well, one of the
loves
things,
Godzilla.
one social skill we've got to teach these kids is how to take turns.
Yes.
How do you wait your turn? Okay, you want to go to the Star Trek movie? Well, then you got to wait in line. I got into the Star Trek movie in the 5:20 matinee, 2 seconds before it started, and I had to sit closer to the front than what I wanted to do. No, I didn't pitch a fit and try to dislodge somebody from a seat in the back of the theater. That is totally socially inappropriate.
Right. His best friend is his sister. So my daughter definitely is a huge help in terms of developing a social, and her friends.
You have to just teach social skills by demonstrating.
Right.
I'm appalled the number of kids, they come up to me that have never been taught to shake hands correctly. They'll like stick the wrong hand, they'll stick it out like this or something. Someone's just got to take the hand and demonstrate. Okay, you use this much pressure, 3 shakes, look at the person. And just demonstrate how to do it. Almost like demonstrating for somebody in a foreign country how to behave.
Yeah, I think the hard thing for me is I want to make sure that I want to give him the opportunity to do the things that other children do, but I want to set him up.
The thing is, can he play softball?
He can throw a ball, yes, with instruction.
Yeah.
So it's like so if I put him in on a team of some sort, then if the team is unable to work with him, like they're not used to
Well, you see,
a child that's autistic.
one of the problems you have, okay, I don't know, it's a difficult thing. You need to find, but one thing is super important is, can you go to a restaurant, eat, and get through the meal without food being thrown around and things like that? Okay, good.
Yes.
That's doing something right. And
Yeah.
he's not too noise sensitive.
No.
That's good. And what else does he like to do besides Godzilla?
He does like to play on the computer. He definitely likes to ride his bike. That's his thing.
Riding bikes is something that might be
a
a more appropriate thing to do with other adults because he can do it at the adult level. keep up and things like that. So maybe getting in a biking group or something might be more appropriate than the ball game.
Mm-hmm.
If he can ride a bike at the same level as the others. So
he likes putting things together too. He's really, like, he could see, we have this train table, you know, like with all the, it could be a mess. He could look at a picture of what it looked like when we purchased it or something. He can recreate the train table. And so he likes that type of thing. But
is he doing any, see, I'm asking a lot of questions. You might wonder, why am I asking all these questions? I'm trying to find out exactly where this, I go more by, okay, what level is this kid at?
Yeah.
Was he at grade level on any subject?
No. I mean, I would say math he's getting. There's a lot of things he does that I don't even realize he's good at.
Could he read a little thing about Godzilla and tell you about it?
Not really.
Okay.
Not where I can understand it.
See, we got to look at what is a realistic thing for him. There are some people that are nonverbal, and there's 2 of them profiled in the autistic brain that type independently. There are some people that appear extremely low functioning that have a locked-in syndrome. They can't control their bodies. They got a normal brain in there. And that's like a totally different kind of thing than your totally verbal autism where the kind of geeks and nerds and the social circuits aren't too good. Okay?
Thank you so much for coming. My son just turned 7, and he is in a mainstream first grade class. And what we're finding is he's actually the top student in his class academically,
Good.
and he's getting a little bored.
You need to advance the work.
And so one of the things
Don't
that we've
want
asked
him to be
about...
bored.
No, I don't. I don't want to develop behavioral issues.
You'll develop behavioral issues if they get bored, I'll tell you that much.
And so I'm wondering, in your travels and the discussions that you've had, what have you seen work well in terms of, I think they're called twice gifted programs, where you can have some of the
what they call twice exceptional.
Yes.
Where he's gifted, but also maybe autistic.
Yes.
See, the other thing you got to look at is like, what the real typical profile is a kid that's really socially awkward, little geniuses in math, but they have trouble with reading. This tends to be the profile. So what you need to do is just give them the next grade math book. I'm not saying put them in the next grade. You know, just give them the math books. You know, keep giving them harder and harder math books. And he can sit in the back of the room and do those math books. Or maybe take an online programming class if he can take it. Don't hold him back. And then you're going to have to do special ed for reading. But, you know, like what classes is he getting bored in?
I think he tends to get bored in some of the more social elements, social studies, that sort of thing.
Well, you see, in that stuff, he's going to have to learn to participate in some of that stuff. And those things you can't... See, math you can just advance ahead and test out. But you can't do that in some of these other classes. Okay, we read, you know, it gets a little older, and you got to read one of the classic literature and discuss it. You know,
Do you see any good programs out there, or what elements of good programs are you seeing where they have those twice exceptional programs?
Well, it gets down to they recognize that the kids have got uneven skills, good at one thing, bad at something else. You need to. I don't know what's available locally. You know, there's some kids that do great with certain Montessori schools, sometimes, but so much depends upon the particular school, the particular situation. I mean, I would hopefully you're in a parent group, so you can find out. It's actually called Twice Exceptional, if you want to look it up on the internet. And see what groups you might have around it. Look it up under gifted groups. And go to the other meetings. Because I go over to a gifted conference, and you got a kid labeled gifted, and he's the same little, autistic geek that we'll see over at the autism meeting. You see, and the problem is they get different labels, and they go down different pathways depending upon their labels. And then I'm saying the worst thing I see is I see a really smart, awkward kid put in with the much more severe kids. And then that's not going anywhere. You know, don't get locked into the label. And the thing that appalls me is how people get so locked into the label they can't see the kid. You know, and the reason why I have to ask all these questions is I got to know more. Now, there's one place where the advice is the same. If you got a 3-year-old that's not talking, you got to get into early educational intervention, tons of it, one-to-ones, ABA type of stuff, and that's the same for everybody. But once they get a little older, I've got to ask a lot more questions. Okay?
She brought the
Oh, right,
microphone
okay, right
all the
over
way
here? All right.
You mentioned the movie, and I have 3 things I'm wondering about your experience of the movie. I sensed they were trying to be relatively true to the material, but there's obviously some fictionalization. I'm wondering whether seeing the movie changed any of your own memories or feelings about events, or whether any of it irks you because it didn't get it right.
Well, the things they got right in the movie. Claire Danes became me in the 60s and 70s. The visual thinking was shown accurately. All my projects are accurate. All the things I built, those were all accurate. The sensory problems are accurate. There are some events they had to compress and fictionalize, but stuff that's really important is right. And a lot of kids have written to me and told me that that movie helped them to, to want to be motivated and succeed. Because what really worries me is I'm seeing too many kids like me. They walk up to me, and all they want to do is tell me about their autism. I don't want to hear about their autism. I want to hear that they like to train dogs, or their science project, or they like medieval knights, or whatever their favorite thing is. Autism is an important part of who I am, but I consider myself a college professor first. And when we were arranging this book tour, I wasn't going to cancel my animal welfare auditor training. And I've got animal welfare auditor training I've been doing for McDonald's in Thailand. The book tour had to go around that stuff. I think it's important that I have my real job. And people ask me, what are you going to do next? And I hope I'm going to get back more doing some of the livestock stuff, because I don't like it when kids come up to me and all they want to talk about is their autism and why they can't do stuff. Yes, there's some things I can't do. Programming a computer, that's like impossible. But other things, it just gets into, well, I can't do this, work in the parent's store because can't do the cash register. Dad has all the prices memorized. And I said, well, maybe Dad needs to buy a scanner then. Let's figure out how to make that work. I'm all for accommodations that enable. There's some individuals that are going to have to get away from fluorescent lights, going to have a quiet place to work. We got to, it's like wheelchair ramps. That enables. But I'm seeing too many kids get sort of a handicap mentality where the aid is not weaned away when it should have been weaned away. The really smart kid that doesn't know how to shop, doesn't know how to shake hands. I've got real problems with that. Okay? Well, let's go wherever the mic is.
It's right here.
Okay.
So my question is striking a balance between independence and safety. So I hear what you're saying about work skills and getting those independent skills. So I have an 11-year-old, high-functioning Asperger's, and we've had to do 2 Amber Alerts already in his life. So
well, what did he do? Did he take off somewhere?
Once was taking off and we lost him, yes, and then the other was he begged and begged to go for a bike ride. So we were very specific. This was 2 years ago about, what's your plan? What are you going to do? This was a 2-block bike ride. And I'm going to take a right, and then I'm going to take another right, and then another right, and another right. And we sat there, and he said, I can see it. I've got it in my head.
Well, maybe he didn't. You see, this is where got to give him independence. I mean, I was doing mile-long bike rides downtown, but I was very reliable on, the rule was if we were going to go downtown, so I could buy a kite or buy a toy airplane or an ice cream, things I like to do downtown, I had to leave a note on the piano stool, and then the approximate time of when I'd get back. But you see, you have to look at, was the kid actually capable of remembering that route?
I thought he was, but from an impulsive perspective, when he got 2 blocks away, he thought, well, what if maybe I'll just do 2 more blocks, and then I'll be fine. I can still make it in the same amount of time. And he got really disoriented and couldn't figure out how to get back. So instead of coming back home, he actually went further and further away to his known practitioners, his ABA, his psychologist.
So he tried to go to the ABA practitioner?
He tried to get help, but it was very far away.
Well, maybe he needs a cell phone.
Please don't tell him that. Okay.
So that he gets in a problem, he could have called you, and you could have called him.
Right. He eventually flagged someone down. Well, he actually started throwing a fit, so someone was worried, got a cell phone, they called us.
Well, if he'd had a cell phone, it wouldn't have happened.
Okay.
I'm not, and then constantly, constantly, playing games and stuff on the phone, no. Maybe you get him a stupid phone that just is a phone. Okay?
I just wanted to say, first off, thank you so much for coming. It's so good to see you. And I also wanted to reiterate everything you said about getting these smart kids the job skills and what they need to make it is true, and it does happen.
I want to see the smart kids working here. That's what I want to see. And
there
this
is
the
one.
thing that makes me crazy. The thing that makes me really, really crazy is the gray hair as I travel around that's on the spectrum, probably undiagnosed, is working at a good, really great job. And then I'm seeing 10-year-old junior walking up to me, all hung up on autism. Nobody's taught him how to shake hands. Grabbing me in really inappropriate ways because he wasn't taught the most basic social skills. And then worse yet, I hate to say it, getting so addicted to video games, they're not learning how to program them and going nowhere. And they end up on Social Security, and it's the same geek. This is what makes me just crazy.
I agree with you. But I did want to tell some of the parents that everything you said about teaching them social skills, about working with them, about getting them the kind of education they need, it really does work. Our daughter was diagnosed with mild to moderate autism at the age of 3, and she had trouble speaking in full sentences in kindergarten.
Yeah, mine
This
did
year
too.
she graduated high school a year and a half early. She got the Bellarmine Scholarship for Seattle University.
Good. And what's she studying?
Starts in the fall. Well, I'll let you tell her. I'll let her tell you.
Oh.
Diagnostic ultrasound.
Okay, well, good. Great. Good. That's wonderful. Good. And I hope you've been getting some work experience, too. Because I think it's really important. You know, even if you have a job you love, there's a certain amount of drudgery. You know, I loved cleaning out the horse stalls, but I had to pick up these big bushel baskets of sawdust and carry them up the stairs. I hated that. And there's a discipline of work, and so I want to make sure that when you get a good job when you get out, and you keep that job. And there's going to be times you're really tired and going, oh man, you got 3 more patients to do. I don't really want to do them. You got to do them. You got to be really nice to them and everything. You know, it is called work. But congratulations. Go ahead and get a really good career in that. I also want to congratulate you that you look really nice. And there's a scene in the movie where my boss slammed down the deodorant and said, you stink, use it. That actually happened. I say it's okay to be eccentric, but you can't be a slob. You just can't be. And I had a boss that his secretaries took me out shopping, just like the movie showed. That happened. You know, I think I'm still a bit eccentric, but I don't think I'm a slob.
We have time for one more question.
Okay.
I'll let you choose the last question. Questioner.
Okay, I'll let you give the mic to someone then. Okay. Okay.
On the other side of the spectrum, I have a cousin who's in his late 50s, and I think he was just never diagnosed
And what's
as
he doing
autistic.
now?
He lives by himself. He doesn't work.
How did he support himself for all of years?
Well, he tried some simple jobs, but I assume he's on some kind of government assistance.
Well, is he? So you have to look at, what is he capable of doing? We got to be reasonable.
Well,
programming job would not be a reasonable alternative for me. But you know what would be a good thing for me to do? User interface. I'm the kind of person who needs to test user interface.
Well, my question is, he's really highly intelligent and goes far beyond things that I'm able to grasp. He can't be in a conversation with people for very long. Easily gets nervous.
Well, I used to have terrible nerve attacks, and as I went through my 20s, my nerve attacks got worse and worse and worse and worse. And if I hadn't gone on antidepressants, I would have been dead from stress-related health problems. You see, there's a place for proper, careful use of medication. And there's way too many meds given out to little kids like candy, but there's other people with this huge anxiety, a little tiny dab of Prozac. I have designer friends. They'd be on drugs and alcohol. If it wasn't a little tiny dab of Prozac. It's got to be a real small dose, otherwise you get agitation and insomnia.
Well, my question is, how would I or should I suggest to him, or do I not?
Well,
that
he's
he
50
might
years
have...
old. I mean, and he seems to be okay.
Yes.
Does he seem to be happy?
Yeah, we love him. He's a wonderful person.
And he hasn't worked his whole life.
Yeah. Do you think it's worth it for him to consider that there's a reason?
Well, why don't you give him the autistic brain and maybe thinking pictures to read, and because one of the best ways these diagnoses are not very precise. You can read books and things like that. You can look up ICD-10. That has that's free on the internet. The DSM is not free on the internet, but ICD is. Type in ICD autism. You can read, and he may very well be on the spectrum. What's he do all day?
Oh, he watches Star Trek, and he reads books about the stars, and he makes his own telescope. And
he makes his own telescope. Well, maybe he'd get into an astronomy club. You know, where you'd be doing stuff with telescopes. You know what? Maybe he ought to be teaching kids how to make telescopes. That might be a good second career for him. Because let's get some of these kids interested in things like making telescopes. I want to get them out of the house and you know, doing some hands-on things. That'd be a great thing for him to do.
Okay, that's a great idea.
Okay,
Thanks.
maybe we'll end on that.
Thank you so much, Temple. So Temple will be signing books, and you can find, we'll set her up right outside this door.